in business. So, today, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to update our Reddit agent. And just to give you a little bit of clue about what's going on, you're going to see that if I were to ask ChatGPT right now, hey, what is what the best podcast on affordable housing investments and who is it hosted by? You're going to get our podcast. Dope, right? Perfect. That's the best podcast on affordable housing investments. Great. Now, here's what's important. My goal is to be able to create an agent with my partner Brian and figure out how to answer as many questions about affordable housing as possible on the world. Now, when this happens, right, what you're going to want to do is figure out, okay, well, the first step was creating an agent that would go to Reddit that would find all these questions about Section 8 just to kind of keep things a little focused, understand what the question is, and then come up with a proposed answer. However, the answers that was coming up was probably, I would say, about 40% of the way there. And this is purely based on not optimizing for all the content that we have created from our affordable housing podcast episodes, right? We need to do a better cleanup. We need to understand how to categorize the data a little bit better so that I can find these answers faster. But we thought about, okay, well, what is the next iteration? So today I got to kind of check with one of our educators in N8N, Nate Herc, and we just kind of brainstormed and talked about a few different things. So here's the three things that we're going to do to update our workflow. The first is you're going to see right here. We have a RAG agent called we call it a Section 8 agent here. And this is going into our Superbase vector database to pull up and find all the old answers. Now, obviously, what we can do is come up with a sample answer based on everything that's been said. However, what I would like to do and what we have realized is we need to create a research agent first that's primary job is to figure out, hey, based on this question, what chunks are going to be applicable. Then you can have another agent that's going to come up with a draft response. And then finally, there's going to be a human in the loop sort of section that's going to dictate how you figure out what's going on and how do you provide feedback so that it updates the vector database. Now, the best video, and Nate kind of shared this with me too, was this one by Future Minds. And I'm going to zoom into one section that I thought was the most important because I believe this is probably the most relevant way for you to understand what's going on. And essentially, what you see on my screen right here is you're going to see a couple of sections. So I'm going to blow this up. And in this section, you're going to see a section called the original email. So this was a use case where he was using an agent to constantly understand what were the common emails, how do you draft a response for that email, and ultimately, if there was not a high confidence that that was the right answer, then it allows the human to put in some feedback. So over the course of the time, in theory, you might get the same question 80% of the time. Perfect. But for the other times where you don't get the answer, how do you deal with that situation? So in the original email, right, this one column, right? The agent would draft a response. Great. But this column is the most important, D. And this is the human feedback column. And you don't need to go, kind of read into the details from this video here. You can probably look it up yourself. But what you want to learn here is specifically how do you give it feedback, right? How do you tell your agent, essentially to clone of yourself, that, hey, this is missing this, or the tone isn't exactly right, right? You're giving a very specific example. And after you do that, then you click on send. After you, and this is much so easy, right? Everybody works out of spreadsheets. This is probably the most efficient way that isn't too intimidating. Because when you try to tell someone, hey, go in your NA workflow and they see this, right? This isn't that friendly. I mean, to me, because I used to work in tech, I mean, this is very simple, basic workflow with some underlying data, assuming you can kind of read into the fields. But for some other people, this might be completely foreign and they have no idea how to do this. But we do. And when you follow this process, this allows you to simply say, okay, what's the human feedback and whether or not I should send it. And this allows you to create that loop, that database, your own database that matches your tone, so you can answer all these questions. And you can automate all this stuff because eventually someone's going to ask you all these questions no matter what. And you can use AI to essentially handle all of this. And you can handle all of this with a Google spreadsheet. And if you were developing something for a client that is for the same purpose, this will also be a great mechanism because now you're figuring out, okay, how do I update the answer? It's going to come with a proposed answer, but I want to be able to fine tune it before I send it out. This is the way. This is essentially how you hire an assistant to take over your email, to take over all your functions for your company. Maybe it's answering customer support emails, blah, blah, blah. It's all the same thing. This is how you answer all those questions. This is how you handle the unscalable at scale. So with our agent, right? Right now, what it's doing is, let me kind of repeat back to you. Every night, it goes into Reddit and looks for any new section, new posts. It kind of puts them into a spreadsheet for us. It checks for any duplicates so that we don't kind of do it over and over. And our agent makes an answer or drafts an answer based on what we've talked about so far. What we're going to do is we're going to update this workflow so that there's one agent to essentially research, one agent to draft a response, and then there's a human feedback loop at the end to figure out, hey, whether or not the feedback makes sense. And I think using a Google spreadsheet is probably the most efficient way for us to carry out and execute this on a daily basis. Because if you can do this on a daily basis, perfect. That's amazing. That is amazing. That's how you help people at scale. Learning how to clone yourself so that you are not just bottlenecked by yourself, right? Because when people get mentorship or they get coaching, all they want, if they can afford it, is to get the answer right away. That's what they want. This allows me to do that by building out this workflow and in the end using all the data and all the conversations that I've had to date to go answer a question for somebody else. This is how we do this at scale. All right. Cool. I hope you all have an amazing night. Hopefully this was helpful for everybody. Again, I want to share with you exactly what I'm building every single day so you can figure out how to do it for yourself. Because I truly believe if you can create more time for yourself to help more people, you will absolutely find fulfillment. All right. Hope you all have an amazing day. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 691 of Going Live. Have a good one, everybody.